How do we stop the international epidemic of dictatorship and spreading of the wars around the world?
I believe that awareness by each individual of the significant role in history,
An understanding of the connections between historical events,
can change the tragic path of the modern-day world. As I'm looking at the world today, I see that often human life means very little or even nothing at all. My film archive helps to remind to all of us how unique every life is and presents many examples of personal courage and shows how one individual can change the course of history and save many lives.
As I filmed in 9 countries around the world for the last 25 years, I have met many great people and collected hundreds of historical testimonies from White Russian Army participants about their fight against the dictatorship regime during and after the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. All heroes of my film archive had difficult life journeys. They survived many dangers of war, refugee and concentration camps, illnesses, years of nostalgia in a foreign land. They lost their loved ones, could not contact relatives back in Russia, and often never saw them again. But despite all these challenges, they always remained kind and compassionate.
My oral history archive covers different historical periods from the First World War of 1914 to the modern-day Russian-Ukraine conflict of 2022. It is very painful for me to see how history is unfolding today. And in my lifetime, the epidemic of dictatorship is now spreading across the world and bringing the horrors of wars everywhere, making the stories of the past from my film archive more relevant today than ever before.
All these bloody wars and revolutions come as a horror to human civilization. And in the epicenter of those historical storms, real human beings, innocent civilians, they are the ones who are often forgotten, left completely helpless and voiceless.
In my 25 years of work as an independent filmmaker and 12 years as independent fundraiser, with great support from Russian diaspora,
we managed to raise more than $350,000 for sick children and elderly in war zones. A lot of first-hand material accumulated over years in my archive through photos, videos, and personal letters sent to me by mothers of sick children from different regions. These records are the most powerful message from one generation to another.
When I told those stories during my lecture to college students, they cried while watching those miraculous testimonies from my film archive heroes.
As multiple wars are setting fire in different parts of the world, and all empty promises given by world leaders have failed, the only way to break through growing public distrust and indifference is by bringing from the past to light real-life examples of brave individuals to help raise the hope of modern-day people.
I want to ask, where is today the modern-day General Wrangel? Do we have anyone similar to this remarkable individual? General Wrangel saved the lives of 150,000 White Army troops and civilians in 1920 by evacuating all those people on 150 ships from Sevastopol during civil war in Russia. Can we find someone like this today?
He took these 150,000 souls to the unknown. Ahead of them was many years of struggle and difficult journeys around the world. But lives of these people were saved, and from the families created by those survivors, many other thousands' lives flourished. The ones who decided to remain in Russia were all massacred during bloody revenge of Bolsheviks, who invaded the city the next day after ships had sailed into the Black Sea.
I had the privilege to know and put on film memories of General Wrangele's daughter, Natalia Petrovna. Over 3 years of our friendship, she generously shared with me many stories about her legendary father and showed to me her great collection of 209 photographs from Wrangel family archive.
General Peter Wrangel was a multi-talented individual. He was a great military commander during the Civil War in Russia, and a wise and caring leader for his army in exile and for millions of Russian people who were forced to leave their motherland in 1920.
Thanks to his courage and care, organized by him, great exodus saved many lives. During the migration years in Europe, General Wrangel showed great leadership and helped to establish Russian-speaking schools and hospitals, helped to organize churches and preserve Russian traditions and language in foreign land.
Message of Bishop John Maximovich, known today to millions of Orthodox Christians around the world as Saint John of Shanghai, was always very simple and clear. We cannot preach the gospel without showing love through real deeds.
And that's exactly what he did all his life. Day and night, Bishop John was visiting sick and poor. He was saving thousands from poverty and death. How much I wish that we had a Bishop John today. This physically fragile but spiritually strong monk with big heart and love for all saved thousands during his lifetime.
Bishop John of Shanghai was the spiritual leader of large Russian Christian diaspora in China from 1934 till the beginning of tragic events of the so-called Cultural Revolution in China in 1949.
Over the past 10 years, I have traveled to 9 countries around the world to record stories of hundreds of grateful survivors who testified to my camera about their miraculous salvation. Even a half a century later, since the legendary survival, they remembered beloved Bishop John with great appreciation and tears, thanking him for saving their lives from being prosecuted by Chinese communists.
They survived an incredible ordeal. They trusted Bishop John and followed his advice. A huge flock of 6,000 people left everything they had in Shanghai, and with old holy icons taken from their beloved cathedral, they boarded a ship and set off into the long journey. Among these 6,000 parishioners were 3,000 orphans, previously homeless children who were personally rescued by St. John on the dark streets of Shanghai. He raised them with love and care in the Russian orphanage. They were his children, his spiritual sons and daughters. They arrived to a small, uninhabited Philippine island of Tubabao, where they spent 3 years and where they established a great camp despite a difficult climate. In many different tents, they organized schools and churches, built pipes for clean water, and established sanitation systems. Everything was created with dignity and order by the very close-knit community.
It took Bishop John 3 years to convince the U.S. government to accept Shanghai refugees and take all of his parishioners without any exception. A third of Shanghai flock were of Chinese descent. By the 1951, thanks to Bishop John's tireless work and prayers, all the 6,000 refugees, both of Russian and Chinese descent, were allowed to come to the United States of America, and some went to live in Australia.
Not one human soul perished during the Shanghai Exodus. St. John of Shanghai saved the lives of his parishioners and the lives of many other generations to come. He left this earth in 1966, but thousands of new human souls in San Francisco and around the world exist now because of Bishop John's love and courage.
It is very painful for me to recognize that all the heartfelt memories of 101 years old professor of Columbia University and legendary Kazakh Казаке Fedorove that all his great knowledge and his powerful message to a new generation about destructive power of war did not help to prevent new wars.
I wish that his story, and the stories of other survivors of civil war in Russia in 1917, and the important knowledge of the white movement participants were taken into consideration by the leaders of our modern world. Those confessional stories in my films unfortunately did not prevent or stop new human suffering. Fedorov shared with me his tragic memories of the very first battle, when at 17 years old he had to look death in the face for the first time. Young teenagers who had to go from school desks to military training to be ready to shoot at their fellow countrymen. Even 80 years later, during our filming, as he was telling me the details of his first battle, he could not control his tears, as he was remembering himself firing into another human being.
The main horror of civil war is that the brother goes against a brother, father against a son, a neighbor against a neighbor. Professor Fedorov's heartfelt tears must be appreciated by all of us today. He bravely shared with me and the rest of the world his painful memories, his deepest feelings. The old-timers of white immigration community, heroes of my film archive, personally experienced tragedies of war, and they became the great supporters of my 12-year effort to raise funds for children affected by Russian and Ukrainian war.
They gave generously and continued to donate for disabled and elderly who are suffering endlessly during this bloody conflict. While in the big cities of Russia, researchers able to conduct some statistics of opinions, the voices of people from small towns and distant regions located at front lines are almost never heard.
In hundreds of letters which I received over those years, forever preserved voices of struggling mothers of seriously ill and wounded children, and voices of children who lost their parents under the deadly bombing. I thank everybody from the bottom of my heart, and those who donate and those who accept our donations. More than 350,000 has been collected over these years, and hundreds of children have received our help. Every day, the war tests the strength of our characters with new challenges, and heroes of my archive, old and new generations, showed me with their personal examples of how to stand up against of evil, how not to break under pressure, and to remain true to your principles. My main goal in life now is to save all of those precious memories and to pass them on for the benefit of education and for inspiration of young generation.
Roots Film TV archive shows how one individual can change the course of history and encourage everyone to ask themselves, what is your role in history?
Все связано, завязано так туго, что развязать нельзя, не потеряв. Предав на миг, навек теряешь друга, поддашься трусости и проживешь в испуге. Солжешь и жить не сможешь, не солгав. На помощь не придешь, когда попросят, и сам о помощи не сможешь попросить. А если в страшном горе тебя бросят, не пожалеют, ни о чем не спросят, то вспомни тех, кого хотел забыть, чьи слезы были неважны когда-то, чья боль казалась дальней и чужой. За равнодушие придет расплата. Кто в дни страданий бросил брата, заплатит своей собственной бедой. Кто издевался над больным и старым, кто не жалел ни женщин, ни детей, не избежит возмездия и кары, ответит за разруху, за пожары, за холод и за слезы матерей, за лицемерие, за подлость, за молчание. Придется поименно отвечать. Все связано за каждое изгнание, за нищету, за голод, за страдания. Всевышний суд уже не избежать.